Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that took me years to understand. The most powerful thing you can ever do in your life is focus on yourself and shift your energy. We live in a world that constantly demands our attention, our time, our heart, and sometimes even our sanity. But let me ask you a question. When was the last time you gave all that energy to you? You can't pour from an empty cup. Prioritize yourself before trying to fix or uplift others. This simple truth is something many of us ignore until we are completely drained. Every day people stretch themselves thin, giving their time, attention, energy, and love to others without taking even a moment to refill their own emotional and mental reserves. They believe they're doing the right thing, being kind, being selfless, being supportive. But the problem is when you continuously give from a cup that's already running low, you begin to feel resentment, exhaustion, and even bitterness. That's not love. That's sacrifice without balance. And over time, it breaks you down. The idea of putting yourself first has been labeled selfish in many cultures. But it's not selfish. It's survival. If you are not whole, if you are not stable mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then how can you possibly offer someone else true support? You're offering from a place of emptiness, and that's not sustainable. There's a difference between helping someone and carrying their entire load while neglecting your own. So many people have been conditioned to believe their worth is tied to how much they can give others. They spend their time fixing everyone else's mess, healing everyone else's wounds, answering every call, solving every problem. And they wear that like a badge of honor. But inside, they hurt. They tired. They craving the same love, the same understanding, the same support. They so freely give. What's even more dangerous is they begin to lose themselves in the process. They forget their dreams, their goals, their peace. They push it all aside for the sake of others, telling themselves that one day someone will notice and return the favor. But that day rarely comes. The truth is, nobody is coming to refill your cup for you. That's your job. You have to learn how to say no without guilt, how to rest without apologizing, how to step away without explaining. It's your responsibility to make yourself a priority. Taking care of yourself is not a luxury. It's a necessity. When you take the time to nurture your own well-being, whether that's mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, you're not only helping yourself, you're also ensuring that when you do show up for others, you do so from a place of abundance, not lack. You speak with clarity. You give with joy. You love without resentment. And that difference is powerful. Imagine pouring from a cup that's full and overflowing. You give easily because you have more than enough. You're not depleted, you're energized. That's the place we all need to operate from. Some people might not understand your shift. They might say you've changed, become distant, or even call you selfish. That's okay. Let them talk. You're not living for their approval. You're living for your peace. You're finally honoring yourself, something many people never find the courage to do. It's not your job to convince them. It's your job to protect your space. You deserve to feel whole. You deserve to wake up without feeling overwhelmed, without feeling like you're already behind before the day even begins. That feeling of peace comes when you stop trying to carry what was never yours to hold. Filling your own cup means being honest with yourself about your limits, recognizing when you need rest, and not feeling guilty for needing space. It means knowing that your value isn't in how much you can endure, but in how deeply you know yourself and what you need. You begin to realize that not everyone is entitled to your time or energy. You don't owe access to people just because they've known you for a long time. Relationships, friendships, family, none of it should require you to sacrifice your mental well-being. You were not put here to constantly be available to others while neglecting yourself. You were not born to be a martyr for someone else's comfort. Energy is a currency. Invest it where it grows, not where it drains. Most people don't realize just how valuable their energy is until it's depleted. They spend day after day giving their thoughts, emotions, and presence to people, situations, and environments that don't give anything back. Then they wonder why they feel so tired, unmotivated, or stuck. The truth is, your energy is one of the most powerful tools you have. It fuels your focus, your creativity, your relationships, your goals. But like money, if you invest it carelessly, it disappears without any return. And if you keep putting it into people who only take or into situations that go nowhere, you'll eventually find yourself bankrupt, not financially, but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Every interaction you have is an exchange. Whether it's a conversation, a friendship, a job, or a commitment, you are either gaining energy or losing it. And if you're not paying attention to where your energy goes, you'll miss the slow drain that robs you of your peace. One of the hardest things to do is to admit that certain people and places are simply not healthy for your growth. But once you become aware of that truth, you have a choice. You can continue to stay in those cycles out of loyalty, guilt, or fear, or you can take control and redirect your energy toward things that nourish you. Not everything deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your presence. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from what feels familiar but no longer feeds your spirit. The moment you begin to look at your energy as a limited resource, you begin to become selective about where you place it. You stop wasting time trying to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing friendships that always leave you feeling less than. You stop holding on to environments that suffocate your potential. Instead, you begin to seek out spaces that feel light, conversations that uplift, goals that inspire. You start aligning with people who match your mindset and mirror your growth. That shift changes everything. Suddenly, life begins to feel lighter, more purposeful. You find yourself waking up with more clarity, moving with more intention, and experiencing joy in places that used to feel heavy. People will often mistake your shift in energy for being cold or distant. They'll say you're different, and that's true. You are different. Because once you realize how precious your energy is, you stop giving it away just to keep others comfortable. You begin to protect it like a treasure, because that's exactly what it is. You start making decisions that serve your well-being, even if others don't understand. And in doing so, you begin to build a life that reflects peace, power, and purpose. It's not about being selfish. It's about being smart with what you give. There's freedom in choosing where your energy goes. When you start investing in things that give back, like your passions, your health, your learning, your peace, you begin to create a life that feels full instead of empty. You start to see the difference between people who support your fire and people who only show up to watch you burn. You become more aware of how environments influence your mindset, how conversations affect your emotions, and how your daily choices either elevate you or drain you. This awareness allows you to take your power back, piece by piece. You don't owe your energy to anything or anyone that leaves you feeling drained. You are not a battery pack for others to use. Your energy was meant to be used wisely, intentionally, and with purpose. And when you start treating it that way, you begin to attract more of what matches that same frequency. You attract peace because you radiate it. You attract love because you embody it. You attract love because you've chosen to give it to yourself first. Focusing on yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary for growth and self-respect. Too many people go through life trying to please others, bending over backward to fit in the boxes that were never meant for them, and abandoning their own needs just to make everyone else comfortable. But the truth is, when you constantly place others above yourself, you eventually lose touch with who you are. You become a version of yourself that exists only to meet expectations, to avoid judgment, to gain approval. And in doing that, you silence your own voice, delay your own dreams, and weaken your own confidence. Choosing to focus on yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-awareness. It's a decision to put your energy where it truly belongs, into your own growth, healing, and happiness. There comes a time in everyone's life when they have to look in the mirror and ask, am I living for myself or just existing for others? That question can shake you because if the answer is that you've been neglecting yourself, it forces you to reevaluate your relationships, your routines, and your priorities. Sometimes we get so used to being available for everyone else that we forget we have the right to be available for ourselves. Focusing on yourself means giving yourself the same love, patience, and encouragement you've been giving others for years. It means asking yourself what you want, what you need, what you feel, and actually listening. Because no one else is responsible for your fulfillment but you. Society often glamorizes self-sacrifice, especially when it comes to relationships and family. We're taught that putting others first is the ultimate form of love. But what's often left out of that narrative is the damage done when we continuously deny ourselves for the sake of someone else. When you focus on yourself, you begin to realize that you cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot lead, love, or give effectively if you are depleted. You begin to understand that boundaries are not barriers, they're bridges to healthy relationships. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to keep people in your life who take more than they give. You don't have to keep proving your worth to anyone. Your value is not measured by how much you endure, but by how true you remain to yourself. It takes courage to focus inward, especially when people around you expect you to always be available. You'll face resistance. You might be called distant or self-centered. But that's only because you're no longer playing a role that served them more than it served you. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to become who you were born to be. That growth requires focus, discipline, and self-respect. It requires you to choose yourself. Not just once, but over and over again, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's misunderstood. When you focus on yourself, you give yourself permission to evolve. You start taking responsibility for your own happiness. You stop blaming others for what you lack and start building the life you deserve. You begin to discover new passions, new strengths, and new levels of peace. You find joy in solitude, clarity in silence, and power in your own voice. You no longer seek validation from the outside because you found it within. That inner peace becomes your foundation and it radiates into everything you do. People often think growth happens in loud moments, in big wins, in public recognition, but real growth happens quietly. It happens when you turn off the noise, tune into yourself, and finally start honoring your truth. It happens when you stop chasing love that hurts and opportunities that aren't aligned. It happens when you finally say, I matter too. Because you do. And the moment you begin living like you believe it, everything starts to change. Stop begging for attention, love, or validation. When you focus on you, it naturally finds you. One of the greatest mistakes people make is chasing after things that should come freely. They beg to be seen, to be heard, to be appreciated. And in that process, they slowly chip away at their self-worth. They start adjusting themselves to be more likable, more acceptable, more digestible. They shrink their light, hoping someone else will finally notice them, finally choose them, finally stay. But the truth is, anything you have to beg for will never be fulfilling. Anything you have to fight that hard just to keep will never bring peace. When you place your worth in someone else's hands, you give them the power to define you. And that's where the problem begin. There's nothing wrong with wanting love, appreciation, or connection. Those are natural human needs. But when that desire becomes a desperate need for validation, you start losing control over your identity. You begin measuring your value by how people treat you, how often they text, how much attention they give you, how loudly they applaud your efforts. That constant search for approval will leave you exhausted, anxious, and insecure. And the sad part is, the more you chase it, the more it seems to run. That's because real love, real recognition, and real connection are attracted to authenticity, not desperation. When you show up as your true self, confident, grounded, and whole, you don't have to beg for anything. The right people, the right energy, the right opportunities will come to you. Focusing on yourself means stepping back from the need to be validated by others. It means learning to affirm yourself without waiting for someone else to do it. It means telling yourself you are enough, not because someone else says so, but because you believe it. When you stop begging and start building, your energy shifts. You move from a place of lack to a place of abundance. You realize that you don't need to chase anything that's meant for you. You begin to understand that love that's real won't require you to beg. Attention that's genuine won't require you to perform. Validation that's rooted in truth won't come with condition. When you turn inward and begin to focus on your own healing, your own growth, and your own peace, everything else begins to realign. You attract different kinds of people. You notice you don't tolerate the same treatment you once did. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth because you're living like you already know it. And that confidence speaks louder than any words. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because self-respect is attractive. Inner peace is attractive. Independence is attractive. People can feel when you're not relying on them for your identity. They sense that you're whole with or without them, and that changes the way they show up for you. This shift requires trust. Trust that what is meant for you will find you. Trust that you are already enough without constantly performing or chasing. Trust that your value isn't dependent on anyone's ability to recognize it. And once you start operating from that belief, you take your power back. You stop living for likes, attention, and empty praise. You start living for purpose, joy, and alignment. You start reaching out just to fill a void, and instead you fill your own cup. You develop emotional independence. You become more present, more grounded, and more secure in your path. What's powerful about this kind of transformation is that it doesn't require anyone else to change. It starts with you. It starts the moment you stop looking outward and start doing the internal work. The moment you stop asking, why won't they see me? And start asking, why am I not seeing myself? That is where your freedom begins. That is when the begging ends and the becoming starts. You realize you were never meant to beg for love. You were meant to be it, radiate it, and attract it without compromise. Learn to say no to protect your peace and energy from distractions. In a world that constantly demands your time, attention, and emotional availability, the ability to say no becomes one of your most powerful tools. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure to please everyone, to be liked, to avoid conflict, or to not come off as rude or difficult. So many people end up saying yes to things they don't want to do, agreeing to commitments that drain them, and surrounding themselves with people who disrupt their mental space simply because they're afraid of what might happen if they say no. But the cost of always saying yes is far greater than the discomfort of setting boundaries. Every yes you give away to something that doesn't align with your peace is a no you take away from yourself, from your rest, from your purpose. The truth is, not every opportunity is meant for you. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Not every relationship should have access to your time and heart. When you learn to say no without guilt, you begin to honor your inner voice. You begin to respect your own energy. You acknowledge that you are not obligated to exhaust yourself just to make others comfortable. Peace becomes more important than approval. And that shift is what leads to true personal freedom. You stop running yourself into the ground trying to meet everyone else's expectations. You stop feeling the need to explain every decision. You simply know what is right for you and you choose it. Saying no is not a rejection of people. It's a declaration of priorities. It's saying, I value my time. I value my space. I value my well-being. And when you begin to live from that place, you start to attract more respect from others as well. People begin to understand your boundaries. They may not like it at first, especially if they've grown used to your constant availability, but they will eventually adapt. And if they don't, that's a reflection of them, not you. Anyone who genuinely cares about you will want to see you rested, balanced, and thriving, not burned out and resentful. Boundaries are how you protect your joy, your focus, and your mental clarity. Distractions don't always come in obvious forms. Sometimes they come dressed as good intentions, as obligations, or as familiar routines. But anything that constantly pulls you away from your growth, your peace, or your purpose is a distraction. And distractions have a way of multiplying when you're unclear about your boundaries. That's why it's important to get comfortable with the word no. Practice it, use it, own it. Let it become part of your vocabulary without hesitation. Because when you say no to what drains you, you are simultaneously saying yes to what fulfills you. You are giving yourself the space to breathe, to think, to move with intention. It takes strength to say no, especially when you've been conditioned to be agreeable or when you fear disappointing others. But that strength grows with every decision you make to honor yourself. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to realize that your peace is not something you're willing to compromise. You stop trying to prove your worth through your availability. Instead, you let your presence be a choice, not an obligation. And that decision creates a powerful shift in your life. It teaches you how to protect your time, how to guard your energy, and how to move in alignment with your value. There will always be more requests, more invitations, more opportunities to give away your time. But there won't always be more of you unless you make sure to protect your own capacity. Saying no is not shutting the world out. It's choosing what gets in. It's learning that not everything deserves your yes, and not everyone is entitled to your attention. You don't owe everyone access to you. What you owe is to yourself, to live in a way that honors your truth, your limits, and your peace. When you shift your energy inward, you become unstoppable. Clarity, strength, and purpose will follow. Most people go through life pointing their energy outward, constantly reacting to the world, chasing approval, comparing themselves to others, and trying to control what's beyond their reach. They spread themselves thin, trying to manage external chaos while neglecting their inner world. The problem with that approach is that nothing external can ever give lasting peace if your internal state is in conflict. When you constantly give your energy to things outside of you, what people think, how they act, what they say, you end up exhausted and disconnected from yourself. But the moment you choose to bring that energy inward, everything starts to shift. You start seeking validation and you start seeking alignment. You stop reacting to noise and you start responding from a place of grounded awareness. You stop drifting through life and you start walking with purpose. The power of inward energy is that it helps you get clear. When you turn your attention inward, you begin to hear your own thoughts without the clutter of the world drowning them out. You begin to understand what you truly want instead of what you've been told you should want. You identify your strengths, your wounds, your values, your boundaries. You reconnect with your intuition. That clarity becomes your compass. It guides your decisions, sharpens your vision, and silences the doubt that once held you back. You no longer feel the need to chase every opportunity or follow every trend. You know who you are and what path is yours. That confidence is not loud, but it is unshakable. It radiates from within and it moves with quiet certainty. Strength is built when you consistently choose to protect your energy. When you stop giving your power away to things you can't control, you gain more of it. You begin to realize that peace is not something you find in the world. It's something you cultivate within yourself. And from that peace comes power. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind that shows up fully, even in silence. The kind that allows you to face challenges without losing your center. When your energy is anchored in your own self-awareness and self-trust, nothing can shake you for long. You might bend, but you won't break. You might fall, but you'll rise stronger because you're connected to something deeper than external outcomes. Purpose emerges naturally when your energy is focused inward. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being everything to yourself, you gain a sense of direction that isn't based on status or applause, but on meaning. You begin to recognize what lights you up, what feels right in your soul, what brings out your best self. And once you find that, it becomes harder to settle for anything less. You start designing your life around your values, not around other people's expectations. You make choices that reflect your growth, not your fears. You move with intentionality, and that movement inspires everything around you. People start noticing a different kind of energy in you. Calm, focused, unwavering. That's the result of someone who has shifted inward and discovered their own light. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes discipline to withdraw your energy from distractions and turn it inward. It takes courage to face what you find inside, your fears, your insecurities, your untapped potential. But the rewards are unmatched. You begin to feel more alive, more connected, and more powerful in your own skin. You stop needing external noise to validate your journey because your own inner voice becomes louder, clearer, and more trustworthy. You stop living for the applause and start living in alignment. You stop waiting for permission and start claiming space. You begin to notice how your energy influences your environment instead of your environment controlling your energy. That's where transformation begins. That's where resilience lives. That's where you truly become unstoppable.